Welcome to the Pregnancy Help Podcast. This episode comes to you from the Dr. Joe Show, the podcast of Dr. Joe Malone, who you may be familiar with from other Pregnancy Help Podcast episodes, or some of our conference workshops, academy courses, or the recently published curriculum from Heartbeat International and Dr. Joe Malone called Women's Sexual Wellness. You can order your copy today at the link posted below in the show notes. In this episode, Dr. Joe sits down with Lora Current, another friend of Heartbeat who you may have heard on our show before, to talk about relationships in today's culture and how we can work to bring about this message of sexual wellness. I want to encourage our listeners to check out the links in the show notes for more on this topic, and I hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome to the Dr. Joe Show, where we learn about women's health and sexual wellness. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Lora Current, and I just want to say briefly that she is a recent master's graduate from Harvard University. But beyond that, I want you to tell her. I want her to tell you the rest of her backstory. So, Lora, thanks for coming, and tell us about yourself.
Dr. Joe, thanks so much for having me. It's always good chatting with you, diving into your research. And I just do think it's so crucial for women and men to understand the differences between women and men. But I am Lora Current. I am from Ohio, grew up, born and raised. I have a unique background where I was the sixth child out of seven. So grew up in a big family out in the country raising beef cattle, but the Lord has really taken me on an adventure. I have been able to really share my faith and beliefs to a variety of different audiences, starting just being homeschooled, then going to a private Christian school. From there, I went to Ohio State University for undergrad, where during that time, I fell in love with conservative policy. I fell in love with working with policy to benefit families, benefit women and children. Worked in the nonprofit world for a little while in undergrad. I had the unique opportunity, which is a long story for another time, of actually becoming Miss Ohio and competing on the national level at Miss America. And during that time, really being able to work with women across the country, again, sharing my faith, sharing my beliefs, sharing my experiences of being a young woman in culture today. I currently am a lobbyist in Ohio still, working still for conservative policy that puts family, biblical family values first.
Well, that's excellent. You've had quite a life so far.
That's the key word. Yep.
A lot more to come here before it's over. Well, I'm so proud of you. Just personally, I'm just proud of the young woman you've become, and who you are, and what a great leader you are. So, you're on the front lines of the culture war, if anybody ever was, there at Harvard. Especially during this last year or so. Tell us what you think is the state of affairs, so to speak, with the situation as far as men and women's relationships. And again, you can start out maybe at the Harvard, the elite level, and then you can just kind of maybe talk about it in general.
That in itself is such a broad question. But what I saw at Harvard is very in line with what I'm seeing in every other area that I've been in or currently am. And that is men and women, the way that they go about relationships, but the way they go about life in general, is just very misguided, in the sense that men and women, what we're trying to push and we're trying to believe, and on an elite level, like at Harvard, it's imperative that we believe men and women are the same. They're exactly the same in the way that they work, in the way that they experience the world around them, in the gifts they have, and in the way they go about relationships. And I've just been able to see firsthand how that's so detrimental to men and women, to those relationships, to the skills that we have as individuals, when we try to become one thing and the same thing, and really belittle those beautiful differences that we have and those needs that we have. And so that's what I saw at Harvard, and was very much in different conversations looked down upon. It was seen as such a horrible thing to say, that men and women are different. It was seen as such an insult to women if I said that women do not have the same skills or giftings that men do, or an insult to men if I said men do not have the same skills or giftings that women do. And the reality is that's not a belittlement. That's just really showcasing the beauty of those differences and where we can use those skills differently.
Right. That's a great and in-depth answer. So would you agree that from, again, what you learned there, and also from your growing up, and by the way, how many of the kids how many boys and girls were there in your family growing up?
It's pretty even. So there's 4 boys, 3 girls.
Okay. I was
It
thinking
makes it nice.
if you're the only girl, you would be in trouble
Yes.
there.
Yes.
Um, what did you think? Again, when you're talking about social construction of gender and sex, basically, that everything is just basically how you're raised and that type of thing, and we're not biologically different. And you said that you saw, the disadvantage of that. Would you say that looking at the difference between the two sexes as being complementary, being one sex has, these skills and these, I guess you'd say, advantages, and then the other sex has these advantages, and then coming together, they end up making a great whole?
Yes. And that's, you see that most clearly in marriage. When you get these two different people, men and women who are intrinsically created differently, come together as one. And yes, you get the benefits of that. You get the benefits of those differences coming together and filling gaps, which where the other sex just couldn't. Just by who we're created to be, we just couldn't. And you also see that in dating, when we really feed into women stepping into the areas that they're supposed to be and embracing the beautiful qualities that they have, that they are designed to have, and men stepping into the role that they are required to have. Even in dating, you see that beautifully complementary. When we both can understand the value of what it means to be a woman and the value of what it means to be a man, and don't try to belittle those values by trying to be the same, yes, those come together complementary rather than butting heads by us both being something that we're not.
Right, right. It's really unnatural. That's what I've really
It
observed.
is. And that's, I think, what we're seeing. And it's so hard. I'm caught in so many situations where it just seems so obvious that yes, this is unnatural. And we're feeling that this is unnatural, especially as a young woman and as many friends or classmates that I have who are young women. And in the idea of hookup culture, or in the idea of just casual dating in the way that so many do. We know as women, this isn't right. This doesn't feel right. This isn't the way that it was supposed to be in dating. This isn't the way that we're supposed to be acting as women. But we're just, society is telling us, yes, it is. Because you are the same as a man, because you have the same needs or desires, or think about dating the same way as a man, that is what you should be thinking. And women, as women, we know it's not. And so there's this constant tension for us is like, I feel this way, but I'm being told this, and it's a battle.
Yes, I've observed that in the college women that I've worked with over the years, and not so much when I first started. 2005 is when I first started teaching at the university, but by 2012, 13, there forward, I just saw a lot of unhappiness and anxiety, depression. Did you observe that amongst your friends, and do you kind of continue to observe that? Is that fairly common?
Of course, of course. It's a kind of, women take a journey on it, I believe, when they truly believe what culture is saying is that, hookup culture is great. Being able to date whoever you want, date around is a good thing. At first, you really latch onto it. And I think that goes back to our human nature of we want more freedom and we want the ability to do whatever we want. And so women who are stepping into that for the first time, stepping into hookup culture, maybe have a one-night stand. The way that they've kind of talked to me about it is the first time it was kind of exciting and new, and maybe felt, I've even heard it say, like, empowering. I was just able to sleep with this guy and walk away. And that's this empowering thing. But every single time when women have stayed on that trajectory, I've talked to them, it's like, but the second time it wasn't as new. I didn't have that new feeling, and kind of just leaving him and then being alone the rest of the day was really hard. And then the next time I did that, I just kind of felt less about myself. And then the next time I did it, gosh, I felt like an object. I felt like he just didn't care about me at all. He was only trying to sleep with me. And I just felt terrible. And that's what it leads to, really, no matter kind of where you step into it originally, is women aren't satisfied with that type of culture or that type of dating or that type of relationships. And that goes back to men and women, and what we need in relationship is so much different. What women desire in a dating relationship that leads to marriage is so unique and so beautiful, than an opposite of what culture is telling you it's being. And women are feeling that when they're on that road of just dating around, they feel this is just not right.
Yeah. And believe it or not, there's a professor that's done research on that, and what he found was exactly what you described. In the beginning, it was kind of, the first or second time, especially like after a young woman arrives on campus as a freshman, undergraduate, the first time, and she's away from home, and it's exciting, and she's kind of competing with the other young women, for these guys' attention and that type of thing. But
Yeah.
it just wears exactly the same way that you described there. And yeah, he's
Yeah.
got a whole study on it. What do you
Yeah.
think? Do you think it's possible, Laura? Because this is my heart's desire and my prayer to reach these girls and young women and to help them to escape this trap that they're in. Because again, I want to interview you, and I don't want to take up a lot of the time with throwing science out here. But I want to ask you, do you think it's possible to reach them as far as helping them to understand what's going on and help them to take the pathway that they're really desiring?
Yes, yes, I is. And again, I think that has to go back to initially letting them know that being different than a man, specifically, I'll talk to women because I'm a young woman. So I'm going to focus on that right now. But we have to go back to showing like, okay, being different than a man is a good thing. And the qualities and the desires that you have, which can be different than another man, a young man in his 20s, it's okay to have that. It's okay to be different. It's okay to know that your body is going to be different than his. Your desires, as far as what you're looking for in a relationship, are going to be different. And that doesn't make you weak, and that doesn't make you not independent, but that makes you a beautiful female, And so if we can go back and say that, okay, the differences of being a woman is not a bad thing, then it's also okay then to say you're allowed to turn down what culture is telling you should be. Does that make sense? Am I explaining that well?
Yeah, exactly. Very well. And really, while you're saying that, I'm thinking, it really fits both scientifically. Again, the things that I've learned, God's allowed me to learn, and also, scripturally, it fits scripturally. So, and again, most of these people, probably particularly at Harvard, that you were, talking with and dealing with and living with and knowing, many or maybe most of them probably have no conception of a biblical Christian
Mhm.
background. But my message, a lot of my message is that really you don't even have to go there. You don't even have to go to ethics. You don't even have to go to, traditional values and that type of thing. It's really in the science, because the science really bears that out. And what you're saying is with most women, there's a few exceptions, but with most women, it's an instinct. So
Mhm.
yeah. So and I think, again, the research, since you and I last spoke, um, I've done some more research, and really it starts in from, I never stop, you know me.
Yeah.
Uh, but it starts in from puberty forward, because from about age 10 to about age 15, I will throw some science in here just for us to kind of
Please.
talk about. Um, Oxytocin, which we talked about, I think, before, the big bonding chemical, and particularly for women, women have 17 times more by the time they're your age, or the young woman, than the guys do. So it's a huge thing on the women's side of things. But both sexes get a 5 times increase at puberty of oxytocin. And with the men, the boys, and becoming men, it really raises their sex drive a lot. And so that's another factor, besides the fact that they get like 20 times more testosterone than the women do at that point. But on the other hand, the girls get it, same thing, 5 times more oxytocin, and they get 10 to 15 times more of the messenger RNA of oxytocin, though that really livens it up. But
Mhm.
in addition to that, they don't have the testosterone that the guys do, and the testosterone really kind of negates the effects of oxytocin most of the time. So,
Yep.
and the other thing is, the brains of the girls, when they're in utero, when they're in their mom's womb, are configured to be sensitive to oxytocin. So the effect of the 5 times more oxytocin, et cetera, on them is, not only does it raise their sex drive, which it does some, but it also highly raises their bonding drive. They want to bond. They want to bond. They want to have respectful, I guess you'd say romantic relationships. Kind of like, I always kind of kid my wife about, uh, she loves Hallmark, movies, and
Yep.
Great American Family movies, the romance, the typical romance. And that's what I think, that gentle and kind of gradual, attraction, and, they end up maybe kissing at the end of the movie. I think that's what a lot of young women want. And I think, again, scientifically, it's in the hormones. It's in the way that hormones play themselves out. So what do you think about that?
I this is the reason I love talking with you, is because yes, you in science terms can just lay it out so clearly. But like you said, there is a biblical reality. But to people who aren't believers or are not driven by faith, you can look at the science in this. And yes, when men and women in the way that we go about relationships, if we are truly just going into our instincts, again, taking out what culture says it should be, but truly our instincts, what you're saying is exactly right. Women want to be won over. We want a man to come to us and say, look at what I've done, look at what I've built, look at what I've created, and let me bring you into this life that I've created in a romantic way. And in the same way, I mean, even we look at the sex drive of men and we can kind of look at that as a bad thing, but God put that sex drive, and you talk about the chemicals that come during puberty, as a motivator for him to want to win over this prize. And so it's not a bad thing. Whereas we as women can hold off on that and say, okay, win me over first, commit to me first. And that is when we can ultimately have just this beautiful union and this beautiful, like you said, complementary relationship that ends in marriage when we feed into, again, those natural instincts of me as a woman waiting. I'll prepare myself well to be this beautiful prize that a man can then come and try to win over. And yes, that is what all women, and you say, with the exception of some, I will say all women, if they're willing to admit it, that is their desire. Women want a solid relationship, a serious relationship, a permanent relationship. No woman, even if maybe right now she truly thinks she does, no woman wants to be alone. No woman wants to be used for her body and then left at the end of the day. And so what you're saying as far as chemical reactions and these natural instincts, it's 100% true. And I think if we're being honest with ourselves as young women, we know that that's true.
I agree, and that's why there's so many unhappy young women. The stats on that, the high school, 57% of the girls are, well, this is 2021, and people would say, okay, well, the COVID thing, that they were reacting to that, but high school senior girls' happiness, Laura, and audience, has been declining ever since 1976, and before that, it was much higher. The girls' happiness, as they measured it, was much higher than the boys, but it started dropping in 1976, and then in the 1990s, it went below the boys, and then it's gotten a lot worse since then. So 57, to finish that story off, the stats, 57% of high schoolers and this was a big survey that they did in 2021, of the girls said that they were persistently sad and felt lonely and felt helpless. Only 39%. That's still a lot, but about half of the boys' percentage was there. So the other thing is, back to the oxytocin and the bonding, just what you're describing as far as the desire in female hearts. They found out that before these girls, they found out that was a much higher percentage once they were past puberty, of these females becoming anxious and depressed, especially depressed. And they found out that 68% of the time, what precipitated it was some kind of a breakup, some kind of and probably there's sex involved in that relationship where, and again, this is 1976. Previous to that, this didn't happen because, again, that's kind of the culmination of the wave where the sexual revolution really got going. And so previous to that, girls didn't register that in the surveys. So my argument, and it's coming from a scientific perspective, is that the sexual revolution, or I call it I've named it the sexual devolution, as in, D, is really the thing that's going on with girls and women these days, that's really made their lives so miserable and that type of thing, because they truly are going against their sexual nature. So you've laid it out really well. And you're such a great champion for this. How can we need to put your brain and your heart in about 30 million young women. Then we have our problem solved. But how do we go about, and I think I asked you this earlier, but can you think of ways that we could get this knowledge in young women's and girls, and probably good to start teaching them about, right around puberty, so they know what's happening and know what's going on with them. How can we do that?
I think I've been thinking about this a lot and actually been convicted in a lot of different ways in this past year, really trying to understand the differences of men and women, not just physically, but also emotionally, also spiritually, because of who we were created to be. There's even ways that we should live our lives differently. As women, I should not try to live like a man or try to date like a man or try to pursue career goals in the same way that a man would. But when thinking about, okay, how do we steer clear of a lot of the pitfalls that are hookup culture or the broad dating culture, specifically talking about young women, we have to, again, and I'm sorry if I'm saying this more than once, but I do find this so important, really show the differences of men and women. And so as a young woman, it's so important that you understand that your physical needs are going to be different than a man. And you talked a lot about cycle and puberty and how much that plays into. We need to, at a young age, explain to women their own body, and that they can really truly see the way that their cycle works because of their cycle, the way that their body's going to react, the way that their emotions are going to react at different times of the month, and to get them to truly understand that. And this goes into a different rabbit trail that I won't step into today, but even in the medical community, sticking birth control on as a band-aid instead of understanding truly a woman's body. And so really getting women to embrace that. So physically, emotionally, again, from a young age, telling women that the way that you're thinking about relationship is different than a man is. And just because a man says, if you give me this physical act, I will give you love. And really explaining the difference between the physical act of sex or intimacy from what the actual desires and relationship that they are needing and wanting emotionally. And then I think spiritually, again, in Genesis, male and female, God created them. And so just from biblical perspective, the way that we are created is different. And that just goes into, again, the way that we should be living our lives then is going to be different. The way that we're going to pursue relationships is different because we were created. It's not a bad thing. And it's not something that we should try to compensate for. We are different because a good and beautiful Father created us that way. So I think explaining those three things, the physical differences, the emotional differences, and the spiritual differences as a young woman that I'm going to have from a man is just crucial that young women understand and then can really hold on and embrace femininity in a way.
I agree completely, as you know. I think what you're describing there is not sex education, but sexual integrity education. Why it's so important to maintain sexual integrity until marriage. And as you described earlier, I know that the female side of it has been gifted in that way to be better at not going down that pathway as far as like being in a situation, getting into a situation and then, losing control of the situation. Now, as you said, the cycle does influence it a lot. And again, for those listening, that may not know this, a woman in her fertile window, as they call it, from about day 8 to about day 14, if the day 1 is the beginning of her period, that's the time where her estrogen goes up by 200 times, and testosterone as well, but she has a small amount of testosterone. If she's drinking alcohol during that time period, though, testosterone raises women's alcohol, and so the combination can really be make her take uncharacteristic moves that she wouldn't maybe normally do. I think my observation, again, of being on the college campus teaching and being on it as a student myself for a lot of years, I think fraternities know that they don't know necessarily the science, but having alcohol as part of their festivities or their activities is kind of ingrained. And I think there's a lot of that modus operandi, I think, involved in it. But
I'll touch on that real fast. Just to again on sexual integrity, teaching young women and young men sexual integrity. I think that's it. And it's not so much teaching like, okay, God says it's wrong. I mean, there are parameters that God says it's wrong because he wants what's best for us, which is true. And it's not just teaching, okay, you don't want an STD or you don't want to get pregnant, which again, also true, also very valid. But it goes back to really breaking down that sex outside of marriage being very young, has significant physical harms and can have significant emotional harms, and breaking it down that way, that again, whether you're a believer or not, whether you are worried about getting pregnant or not, really understanding like, okay, emotionally, is this something that I want to do? Is this something that I want to, a path that I want to go down? And in reality, again, when we truly understand what that type of just loose sex or loose relationships leads to, no, that is not the desire of any of our hearts.
Right. And I do believe, and I think we've talked about this before, but I do believe I've kind of studied the trends in this cycles, and history definitely does go in cycles. So, the Enlightenment from 1660 to about 1800 was definitely a swing with a pendulum towards what I call sexual anarchy.
Yeah.
And a lot of things happened during that time period that kind of imitate today. And then 1800 to 1920, it swung back pretty hard, with the Victorian era into what we would call sexual integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And then now it's from 1920 forward, it's really swung hard, and again, you've experienced that being on the campus in the 2020s of how far out things are as far as sexual anarchy are now. But I do believe that it's on its way swinging back. And again, young women like yourself, young men like yourself, hopefully, that have the same mindset and same heart, can be the leaders, to move it back in the right direction. Have I talked to you about the Tsimane tribe in Bolivia? Did I have that research last time we talked? And because it brings your background kind of makes me think of it. Did we talk about that?
Yeah.
We did?
No. Explain more of it this time. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think I'm guessing, but it's a pretty good guess. I think that on your farm that you were raised on, you probably saw your mom and dad have a team that really modeled for you the kind of team probably you want to build, and the complementary situation with your parents, loving each other and working together, and
Yep.
your dad and mom, sacrificing themselves for each other and for you. Was it 6 kids?
Yep.
7.
Yep.
7 kids. Yeah, I'd almost have the Waltons or that type of
exactly. Reality TV show.
8 is enough. But the Tsimane tribe down in Bolivia, they've done a fair amount of research. People from Emory University, and what they found was they went down there, and they have what makes it interesting is they have nothing except like Western clothes, a little bit, clothes that they didn't have to make for themselves, and they have rifles. Other than that, they live as they used to, for who knows how long, thousands of years. So they call them traditional societies, and that haven't been touched by our civilization. Every day, the dad goes out and hunts for game, and takes maybe 6, 7, 8 hours to get something, kill it, and then bring it back. And they were curious what was going on in his hormones as he was doing this, and they speculated that his testosterone would go up when he made the shot, And of course it did, because they were having him spit in his hand and testing the saliva along the way. Well, that fulfilled their expectations, but then they got to thinking about it as well. What else might be motivating him besides testosterone, which again you mentioned is good, and it is, but it's in concert with other things. They went down again like 2 years later, and they did the same thing, except after the shot, they started testing everything, not just testosterone, but everything. What they found out was that both testosterone and oxytocin, when he turned towards home, both his testosterone and oxytocin were very, very high, and they stayed high until he got home to his family, his wife, and I think they had 8 kids, and and shared the game with him, that type of thing. So again, I'm thinking of your parents, I'm thinking of your family, kind of a natural family, in its way, that way. And the Tsimane family, his natural family. I think God built us, and I think science proves it, that men are really cut out to be providers and protectors. And when they're in that role, when they're not playing the hookup role, when their testosterone alone is high, which is what happens when they're just playing around. And women stays high too. I mean, relatively, when they're just randomly having sex. But when they're in that role that you described, where you're married, you're working with each other and for each other, for your kids, I think it puts especially men at their best. And
Yes.
it adds on average 10 years of life expectancy to them as opposed to what it would be otherwise. And it adds 2 to women. So anyway, what are your thoughts on that?
That's so encouraging to me. I'll go back to what you said first. History being cyclical, that is encouraging to me because yes, we do see sexual anarchy right now. But what you said is, I think, also true is we're coming out of, or there's potential to be coming out of a stage for that because as women, we are starting to step away from hookup culture and at least the realizing of like, this is not what I want to participate in, you know? And so I think that there's opportunity to be able to speak into the lives of young women who are in that stage of this just doesn't feel right, for people who are aware of the truth and who know the science behind and who know the desires of women to come and say, there's so much more that relationship has to offer than hookup culture, and really grabbing them in that moment of just that feeling of this isn't right, to be able to come out of this phase, this era of sexual anarchy and getting women. Yes, what you say is men, and giving this story, men, when they are stepping up to the plate that they should, being providers, being protectors, being men, being masculine men, it makes them at their best and really allows women to be at their best. But women in that same way can encourage men to step up. And a great way to do that is by withholding sex until marriage. You know, and I'll just, that's a very
perfect
way of putting it. But again, as a young woman, I am going to have a young man work for my gift, for being married to me. And that's what we have to do as young women to get men to step up and be at their best, is to, again, it's actually very easy for us because it is our natural desire to say, hey, I would like a committed relationship. I would like a serious relationship. I'm not going to jump around. I'm not going to date loosely. I'm not going to sleep around with you. I'm not going to give away pieces of myself until you step up and be the man and commit to me in the way that you should. And it really puts men and women both at their best. And so I love that story, really putting the science behind that. And we are seeing that. And history, yes, is cyclical. And I think we're stepping into an age where both men and women are empowered to kind of step into their correct roles. And if we can explain that well, we'll see that. We'll see the family structure rebuilt.
I have the greatest hope in that. And again, you give me hope. You and others, they're fewer and far between than I would like to be, but you're definitely a bright hope, bright light for the future. We just need about 30, 40 million more just like you.
Exactly. So
and we're working on that. We're working on it. Let me ask you a few questions to finish off. I know because we're getting low on time.
Absolutely.
So kind of looking back on our conversation and anything else you want to add, what in your view and experience is the most dangerous to young women in our current culture?
Okay. And I know we're running close on time, so I'll give a quick answer.
You got about 5 minutes.
It is feminism, really feminism and the ideologies around that. Feminism, what it did, and you can argue, or people can argue whether it was the original intention or not, but what feminism did was it said men and women are the exact same. Their gifts are the same. Their roles and where they're going to be able to succeed are the same. Their sexual desires are the same. The way that they go about relationships is the same. And that's just so false. In fact, there's a lot of conversation right now about men should not be competing in women's sports because they're so blatantly, obviously, physically different. Right. And that's true, but it's so much more than physicality. It's emotionally, it's our bodies and the way we react hormonally. And as you so clearly point out, chemically is just different. And so really, I think that's the most dangerous thing right now is we're telling men and women, and specifically, again, I'll speak to women as I am one, we're saying that women, in order to succeed, in order to have good relationship or even to have good sex, we have to go about it in the same way that men do. And that is just incredibly dangerous to women and incredibly false.
Yeah. Absolutely. I need to make clips out of this and then put you out there all over the place. Each statement that you make, because it's absolutely the truth and absolutely so well said. And again, coming from who you are and your background, such a great thing. What do you see in the future for women's health and sexual wellness? And you kind of gave us a little bit, I think, of foretelling there, but any other thoughts?
Yeah, again, I'll just point out those 3 points that I made earlier. I would love to see women specifically better understand their physical differences, their emotional differences, and their spiritual differences. And again, women better understanding their cycles and the way that their body emotionally and hormonally is going to respond to their cycles. It's easier for us to understand these weird feelings that are going on inside us during puberty, or even, yes, stepping into college, onto a college campus, and a guy coming up to us at a party for the first time and kind of offering us something. If we can understand better the way that our bodies are reacting or what we're desiring out of a relationship, then we can better understand these situations that we're put in and better handle them and be able to challenge men and make them again step up to where they should be, or really feeding into the desires that we have in our heart.
Yes, and your value goes up every time you do that too. I mean, again, we don't have time to get into it, but we've discussed that
Correct.
before. The men
Yep.
they categorize women. So,
Yes. Yep.
yeah. So let me finish with this one, and then I want to see if you got any other thoughts in your mind. What specific things then do you think we should be attempting and accomplishing in order to create better health and sexual wellness for young women in the future? Anything you want to add to what you've already said?
Again, just reiterating sexual integrity. What I was told as a young girl, and for some reason, this just held so strong to me. Somebody once said to me, she said, Laura, by waiting to have sex to marriage, you would be giving the greatest gift to your husband. Like that is the greatest gift that I can give to my husband. And the same thing for him to me is to be able to, after I get married, be able to give all of myself towards him. And for me, that was just like the click of, yes, this is something so special. It's not just a physical act that can be thrown away or tossed away, but it's something that is, as of right now, it's fully mine. And it's mine until I choose to give it away. And I'm going to wait until I have that committed relationship like I desire, the man who came after me romantically with intention. And so that was just kind of the thing for me that I latched on and held to. But finding that thing for all women, really, whether is it, yes, are you looking for a committed relationship? Are you wanting to go about sex safely? Are you wanting marriage and family? And finding the thing that really they can latch on to and understand, to really understand that this specific gift that they have as a woman is so unique and so special and so valuable. And it's not something that should just be thrown away. And that's what culture says, is it's just an act. It's like getting ice cream. You can do it this time, and then tomorrow, next week, you can go out and get ice cream again. And that's just really not what sex is. And getting girls to understand just how important it is to their physical health, their emotional health, their spiritual health. That is just so crucial, that I think we really pour into and emphasize to women. Again, not just talking about STDs, not just talking about God's will, but also, again, for you as a person, this is something that's so special because you were designed as a female.
Right. Absolutely. Again, you got it down. And again, I hope that we can work together on this in the future, because that's what my goal in life, my life's work has really become this. So,
yep. And I appreciate it so much because, yes, like you said, when you can really tie in science behind it as a young woman, it just clicks for us like, oh, now I understand.
well, excellent, Laura. I mean, again, I acted like I was joking, but I really am not. We need about 30 million more just like you.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it, and all the work you do and encouragement you give to me.
Well, it's my honor and my pleasure. So, well, we'll have to do this again if you're willing. You got so much wisdom. So, until next time, though, you take care of yourself. It's always great to see you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Joe. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Laura. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.